Get 'em.
Welcome, folks. Y'all come on in and make yourself at home. This here, well, this is the Rolling Thunder Podcast, your home for all things Rolling Thunder. This episode is brought to you by Mossy Oak, because everything is better in Bottomland. Kent Cartridge, quality matters, performance counts. Shen Gear, waterfowl gear that is built better. And Benelli USA, dominate the skies.
Alrighty, welcome to this episode of the Rolling Thunder Podcast. We got a very special episode tonight, one I'm pretty excited about. Spence, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where we're at?
Well, we're in the kitchen at Mom and Dad's house, and we at the table we have my dad and then Uncle Hollis, and so I want to, like, y'all aren't going to do a very good job of this, so you're going to have to kind of loosen up here and do a good job of it. But I want to just kind of talk about what y'all didn't, the term today for what y'all were as adult onset hunters. That's the official term.
Sounds like something you need therapy for.
Yeah. Well,
we do.
I think I was going to say, I have gotten therapy for it. So
in the medical world, we'd be a type 2 hunter.
Type 2 hunter.
Type 2. Type 2 diabetes. No.
But so what I wanted you to just talk about was why was this a thing? Why did y'all decide to start hunting? Where'd that come from?
Why questions are always the hardest ones to answer. I know why I did. I don't know why he did. I did because he asked me, thought we ought to go hunting, we ought to go duck hunting. And I thought it was just about the dumbest idea he'd ever come up with, because neither one of us had any idea how to duck hunt. But I've always kind of gone along with whatever he wanted to do. Most of the time it's been bad for me, but every now and then it's been good.
Spence, that's a great question, and it is it's not a straight answer, because I don't know. I'm convicted that there's some things that God made us to do that we're just born loving it. Mm-hmm. And the love of the outdoors, hunting, fishing, is one of those things. And so, with that being said, your grandfather wasn't a hunter. Mm-hmm. He didn't know the difference between a rifle and a shotgun, a tree and a bush. he didn't. That's not him, at all. And so we had nobody in our world that did that. Mm-hmm. And so we got some kind of crazy idea that we want to hunt.
Time to learn.
And now we can drive, and so we can hunt. Mm-hmm. I want to do that. But it was the same thing about a couple of other things. Where did we get that about the horses? Where did we get that about snow skiing? In 1972, I didn't know one person that had ever been snow skiing. I'd never seen it, never nothingned it. But I wanted to do that. And the next person I wanted to do it with me is Chuck. Next thing you know, we're trying to snow ski. But the hunting thing was
went about as good first time. This isn't about snow skiing.
Okay,
this is
sorry,
a podcast about snow.
No, but it all ties in. It's all part of it.
The
so
first few snow skiing stories are pretty good, though. I mean,
so yes, pretty good.
You're kind of wearing your snow skiing clothes, aren't you?
Yeah. His first one was what they call epic.
Yeah.
But
Not
I digress, as they say. But our first duck hunt was memorable. We said we're going to duck hunt, and we went to.
It sort of went a little bit more like you called me on the phone and said, "I think we ought to go duck hunting." And I said, "I think you're crazy. We don't have anything that you do. We have nothing."
All right, so Did you know anybody
Yeah, say,
that
did you
duck
just,
hunted?
was it just on a whim?
Well, Chris, that's no. I mean, it was something we wanted to do. And I'm trying to convince you, we were born wanting to do it. We just didn't know it yet. We didn't. We were just. It was in there, and so it wasn't a whim. I wouldn't call it that, because it's too constant in our life now. It's something that was in us, and we're just trying to get it figured out. But we didn't know anybody that did it. Nobody, and Chuck's right. We
didn't have shotguns. We didn't have duck calls. We didn't have decoys.
Well, so I had an old, hang on. I had an old, we had got asked for guns when we were little. So I had had I already had the old 16 gauge?
No, you had a 20 gauge. We borrowed guns. I had a 410 and you had a 20 gauge. Maybe you had a shotgun.
I think
can't
I
remember.
did. I think I had that 16 gauge double barrel. When we were kids, we asked for guns. Wanted to shoot a gun. And somewhere along the line, we got one. He's right. We got a 410 and a 20 gauge single shot.
The fact that Mama would just get y'all guns is a story by itself.
And so we had us a couple of guns. And
you want a gun and a horse, okay?
And
we'll add a Cobra jet to it.
and I think I had a 16 gauge double barrel Fox.
Okay.
That I had a little cheap Sears and Roebuck gun, and I'm pretty sure of that. And Chuck, as he said, borrowed one. We didn't have, so had to borrow a gun. We
didn't have any money for licenses either.
So we borrowed the license. He borrowed a license from Bart Gary, and I borrowed a license from Randy Holcomb.
These are actual real people. We might not should mention their names.
I mean,
The statute of limitations
we gotta
is
be,
long
we gotta
over.
be past.
Yeah.
So I borrowed, and we borrowed decoys from Holcomb.
And we didn't have any lines or weights on them, so we went up in the attic of the hardware store that Spence's other grandfather owned and got some nuts and bolts and some string and
Tied them up.
tied nuts and bolts
we
to the
got us a book, and because no internet, and we got us a book, and we read how to put out decoys. And it said you could put them in a modified J.
That was our favorite pattern that day.
Modified J. So we went. So I said, where do they have ducks? And Chuck was a fisherman, and Chuck said we can go to Flower Lake. You can rent boats there.
Yeah, they rent boats there, and I knew where there was a duck blind that we thought we could must be able to just go get in it.
So we drive down to Flower Lake. And did you have a motor?
No, we borrowed one.
Okay.
We borrowed one from Pop.
I'm sensing a theme.
So
we didn't have a boat, a motor, a gun, a license, a decoy, or a duck call, but
waiters.
Those were really no big problems.
So we borrowed all that stuff from different people, and obviously the people we borrowed from we didn't know very well. But we went around and got this from there, that, and that, and so here we're ready now. We go down to Flower Lake.
First problem: they're not renting boats at 3 o'clock in the morning during Christmas break down there.
He had been down there fishing in the summer where they rent fishing boats. So back, around the side and up along there, there's a stack of boats that we thought we could.
Maybe we just pay them later.
Yeah. So we went up there and got us a boat and went down.
We borrowed a boat.
We borrowed a boat. No, that's it. That's the word. We borrowed a boat.
We brought it back.
Yeah. And we went out to where he thought this duck blind was, and it wasn't there anymore. And there was a 2x4.
Some remnants of an old deer stand were what I ended up remembering.
There was a 2x4 between two trees that was nailed on there.
Yep.
And so we put the decoys out in a modified J and sat on that 2x4 between two trees. I have no idea how deep it was, because
we tied our boat up under the tree and climbed up two little trees on the limbs and perched up there on that 2x4.
Sat on that 2x4, didn't shoot, but there had been a shot or two down this little body.
We started looking at our duck calls, trying to think about maybe blowing them.
Yeah, Chuck could blow a duck call a little bit. I could not at all.
So-
Still can't.
Let me interrupt real quick. So in your life at that point in time, Dr. Stanley duck hunted a little bit, and and I guess Pop duck hunted some when
I
he
wasn't
was.
a veterinarian yet. I wasn't.
And I understand. I'm just thinking about people in your world that you would have heard describe duck hunting. Who else? Can you think of anybody else that you would have heard?
We had a neighbor that duck hunted, Wade Williams. He duck hunted some and described duck hunting, and so we'd heard about it.
Like when we were 6 years old and 9 years old.
Right. So.
But like when you and Mom were dating, Pop wasn't duck hunting.
No, he hunted only when he was before he had kids. He didn't duck hunt. I don't remember. I don't remember ever talking to anybody about it like as a sport. I always wanted to do it. And when he called me, I thought it really would be fun, but I just didn't think we had any business. We were bass fishermen. I could do that.
Yeah.
So we I'm gonna get past this story real quick. Let me get finished. We didn't shoot a duck, so we got down, pulled our boat in, got our decoys, and we went down to another place and stood up underneath a tree where you could stand. You could stand in the water underneath a big. It was a great big tree in real shallow water. I don't know what kind. It must have been an oak or something. Real shallow water. We're standing there, and a duck came by, and we unloaded on it. Last shot killed this duck. It fell out there. I could walk out there. I walked out there and picked it up and had no idea. I was pretty sure. We were both pretty sure it was a teal. It's a little duck.
I'm thinking that you and me sort of divided on that. I think you thought it was a wood duck, and I thought it was a teal.
Well, yes, that's how it's gonna end up. And at the end of it, we're pretty sure it's a teal. And then I said, this could be a wood duck. And they said, no, those are rare. And they weren't killing those like they do now. But this could be a wood duck. And so when we left out of there, I thought it was a wood duck. He thought it was a teal. But we started out pretty sure it was a green-winged teal. And it's going to turn out to be a drake, a male wood duck, and a little woody. And that's our first duck hunt. We're off to the races.
We've gotten a little better.
Yeah. Give me a frame of reference. What year is this?
That's a really good question.
So it was 1979, probably, because I started vet school. We had moved in a little house, and it was Christmas break. I came home. You weren't married yet. You can't tell it on a podcast, but he's a lot older than me, and I got married first, so I was already. So
79-ish. About how old were the two of you at this point?
I was 23.
Okay.
I was born in 53, so I'd have been 25.
Yeah.
And the fellas that you managed to scrounge hunting licenses and decoys from, how old were those?
Well,
those fellas?
they ranged the whole gamut.
Well, I was just about the license part. I just hit me.
Bart was one of them.
Right. But what state was this hunting license?
We didn't think about that.
I mean,
that's a great question.
I mean, because
we probably never think.
Because Jackson Point would have been in
Flower Lake was Mississippi. So, well, Pop didn't have
Bart Jackson Point then.
Bart had a place to hunt in Arkansas.
To duck hunt?
Well, he had been to a friend's place, but I don't think
like
we ever.
In high school.
I'm pretty sure that we don't know the answer to that.
Pretty sure.
Good answer.
Federal bird, isn't it?
Pretty positive. I don't know the answer to that.
Seemed good that we had them.
It's just now I'm understanding it's a good question.
Is there some part of our story that doesn't seem right to you? Like this is.
I'd forgotten that the borrowed license part. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So were you about to look up the date?
No, that hunt's not in there because these journals that I keep started. The first hunt was November 24th, 1981.
We were really experts by then.
So by that time, I'm really good.
Yeah.
So for everybody listening, Uncle Hollis has what I'm assuming is a small sampling of your hunting journals from over the years.
Well, it's a little better than that. This is the sample. That every hunt I've been on is in this box right
Okay.
here. And it from 1981 to now. These are the journals. I believe this to be all of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
Read us an excerpt from November 24th of 81. That had to be pretty close to opening day.
I think by 1981 we understood that there were seasons and real licenses, and we probably had a gun by then. And I'd learned how to blow a duck call by then.
You were working for Dr. Stanley at the time?
You're asking a couple of things about Dr. Stan. I will do this one fast. It's not particularly done. It's my first one, so give me a little license here. But 24 November 1981. I guess this is as good a place to begin as anywhere. There has been many prior hunts to this one, many of which I wish I could now write about. There's been so many beautiful hunting memories, most of which will be kept only in my mind. Today was opening day, duck season, Arkansas. We hunted Horseshoe Lake. It was Brother Chuck, Glenn Wimmer, and myself. It was really a good hunt. We were in our place well before sunup. In fact, I shot the first duck before sunrise fully. Chuck called it in beautifully, and I shot it with the first shot. We got our second within 30 minutes. Our third was a Susie that Chuck shot right over our decoys. Our first two ducks were both pretty greenheads. Glenn almost fell in, but didn't get wet because of his waders. After the hunt, I had to go to work. Because of a bet, Dr. Stanley had to clean the ducks.
Yeah, Dr. Stanley said he thought we were pretty pitiful that was his favorite word for me, pitiful. And
I can hear him say
he said, I'll clean every duck you kill. And he pretty much refused to clean every duck I killed after the first ducks I killed. He remembered it a little different after that because I brought him back to the clinic and had him to clean them for me.
Did y'all hunt horseshoe very much?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was free.
That's our place.
I just don't remember ever hearing horseshoe stories of.
Yeah, we hunted Happy Jack mostly, but that was our first. That's the first journal entry here, was Happy Jack.
That was a good hunt. We shot 3 ducks.
Yeah. So how many ducks did we kill in 1981, 82?
Well, I was going to ask what the limit was. Is that the point system?
Oh, man, Hollis, I'm hoping your journal and they'll remember better. But I think it was points. It was clearly point system in 1981, and I think that you could have probably killed 4 if you got the points right.
Well, the reason I ask is because if you shot that hen third, would that have put you over your points?
If you shot it third,
for one person.
Yeah.
If it had been one person. We lived through the points, changing, up 75 points for Susie, 25 for a Drake.
Yeah.
And then we lived through the 2 duck limit years. We had a lot of years of 2 ducks. But I did total them. And some, and so 83, 80.
You totaled the 81, 82 season?
The 81, 82 season, how many? 48 ducks.
Wow.
48 ducks. And so that's pretty great. 82, 83, 84. I just see it. 83, 84. All season. 27.
Wow. What? Hold on for just a second, though. Where in there did you lease something?
Ooh, 82, 83.
Yeah, I was going to ask you 82, 83. You skipped one.
Yeah, I just didn't see it here. We killed 8 ducks and 1 goose.
It's a tough one.
We might have had to go to work. Somewhere in there you got born.
Yeah, I was going to say I'd have been 8 months old.
When were you? What's your birthday?
February of 82.
Okay, so February of 82. So I need to find you in February 82. So you're going to show up in 83. February 82. So
So you asked the question, when did we first get into a lease?
Right. So like these seasons, I mean, this is Horseshoe, Flower Lake. This is whatever
So
you could find and scrounge up.
Pretty early on, Hollis got an invitation to be a member of a little place that was close to Tunic, and it just basically amounted to a field that would flood naturally. And
is that what we call Whistling Wings?
I don't remember the name of it, but Ace Roberts
Right.
was a friend of ours that we knew from church. And it was $500, which was really a lot, and I couldn't afford it. Hollis has pretty much paid my way the first half of my duck career when I couldn't afford stuff. I'm kind of paying him back a little bit now, but the Ace Roberts is Marty Roberts' father.
Right. Which is Sporting Life Kennels.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was actually Marty Roberts' Sunday school teacher. So that was the connection. And so Hollis paid the lease and put me on it, and we shared the duck hole with Marty when he was about 16 years old.
So y'all were the classic buy one, get one free lease. You just show up with an extra. I mean,
No, what they knew I was a tag along. I kind of come with the baggage, in those early years.
so you
So
said
here you go, February 1982. Early this month, I worked a buy-in deal, 722 acres in Brinkley, Arkansas. So early this month, so that's February 1982, I bought into Brinkley, Mill Lake Farms.
Mm-hmm. And I followed that, was it 2 years later? Bought my membership, something like that.
I think it was.
So it was 722 acres initially,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and then you bought the piece on the highway in the nuclear woods, and
Ended up being about 1,500 when we sold it in 2006.
You're anyway, you're in here, Spence. When you were born, I just read it. I can't seem to find it right now, but I'm referenced your birth in here. I'm just freezing up here. I can't find it, but your birth in here.
So do you remember in there the first time you went to Black River? Was that 85?
It's in here. That's about right. Maybe 86.
I'm thinking it was 86.
It was either right before or right after I went to Houston, and for the fellowship, and I believe it was 86.
It was before. And you were invited to go to this. These guys were going to be guiding, and it was kind of their first guided hunt, and they were buddies with a guy that was a salesman for the radiology department, things that they bought where Hollis worked, and he got invited to go on this hunt and brought me, and so we hunted in the cabin. We stayed in the cabin that we ended up later owning, but our first hunt at the Black River was with Gail Breckenridge and Franklin Williams as guests of a company that was trying to persuade, Hollis's, say thank you to Hollis's company for where he worked.
So you bought into Brinkley in 82. What were the first couple of years at Brinkley like? I didn't mean to hard change subjects on you quite like that.
Yeah, that's all right. Looks like, just by the way, looks like maybe the first time I went to Black River was maybe 20 December 1986. Yeah. 20th December 1986.
Did y'all get them?
Yeah.
It was a good
We hunted
hunt.
the big hole.
It was good that day.
You've got that one written down?
Uh-huh.
You to read it to us?
Okay. I'm just trying to see if it's worth reading. Can I tell you about it?
Sure. Yeah, tell us about
it. I think it'd be better than reading it because it was interesting because back then, man, talking to Spence because Chuck will remember it, but we went to the Big Hole. Mm-hmm. But we went to the Big Hole by going downriver.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
And so we took, and to do that, as you know, even today, if you did that, you'd have to go down there in a big boat, so to speak, get to a spot, and then have to cross the levee.
Right.
And then we'd get in a little boat right there, okay? A little woods boat, and we'd hit that levee at the end of Barnes Slough.
Right.
And go up Barnes Slough. And that's what we did. We had two boats. And so I'd never woods hunted before, and we're going down, and I'm in the very front of the second boat. I'm the front guy, second boat, on the nose, and we have a whole group, 8 of us or so. Too many people in these two boats. Trust me. And but
Trust me.
But we're going through, and it's dark, and Franklin Killer, i.e. Killer, is AKA he's in the boat in front of him. He's right driving the boat in front of us. And he gets he stops and it's dark and we have to stop, but we're moving still. We can't put on the brakes,
right.
And we're about to run into him. And there's a stop about 6 feet out of the water, about like that, and I put my hand on it to hold it, hold the boat to keep from running into him. He's close me to you, and he stops and he's doing the light all down the boat, and he's trying to find something in the boat, and then he looks out in the water, and he picks up an old stick in the water. It's about this big around. He hits it, and it's kind of rotten, and he gets him a length of it about 18 inches long, and he hits it on the boat, and it's solid, and it's 1986, and he said, and I said, "What are you doing?" And finally, he's all fumbling around. It's dark, and we don't know what's going on. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I don't." He said, "I don't want to ever pass 15 bucks." And at the time, coon hides were $15, and I said, "What?" He said, that coon's worth $15, and I said, "What coon?" And he shines the light almost in my face, and he shines it on that tree, and my hand is 6 inches from that coon. He's on that tree with me,
and he's like in a hole, right?
No, he's holding on to the tree. He's just holding on to the tree, looking. I mean, I could have done this, and I'd have been on him. And he's right there, and I pull my arm back, so fast, to reel it in, and I'm right here. That coon's right there, and I'm holding on to him just about. I could have been, and God, and so I was standing there, and Franklin's there, and he reaches down. He's in the boat. He reaches down, and that's coon now hissing, and I'm 2 feet.
Making an awful wreck.
Oh, you know what that's like, and Killer gets the tail of that coon. His head's sticking up, and he's going up the tree, and he grabs the tail of that coon, and he just squalling and holding on to that tree with both feet, all four, and he rips the back legs off, and then he pulls a little harder, and the front feet come off, and when he does, that coon comes backwards. He's going to get Franklin, and Franklin goes, whoa, and he boom, and he just tosses him in the boat.
And we left.
And I can't breathe. I hadn't gotten to the duck hole yet, and we motored onto the duck hole, and we hunted a place Chris called the Big Hole there, and we shot him. We shot him good that day, as I recall. And I'd never seen anything like ducks coming down through the trees and green timber like that. It was unbelievable hunt. They were very gracious, the guys. They're characters. That story, I can go on with stories like that, but that's my first introduction to these guys. And that was December 1986.
So you got in Brinkley in '82, and then you, Dad, you got a membership a couple of years
I
later.
think it's probably '84.
And then when did y'all do something else? When did Lucky 10 come along?
Well, they all got kind of crowded in there because by now we're really head over heels, in love with duck hunting, and some guys, I would say it was probably 90 or somewhere in there when the Lucky 10 Club formed. And so at one time we were in Brinkley, we had a cabin at the Black River, and we were also members of a little place on the Langell called Lucky 10, but it was pretty early.
So we got in the Langell deal was before we bought into the cabin.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to Black River regular one time a year. We had a little standing thing that we'd go up there the third day of the season. We'd hunt opening weekend somewhere, and we'd show up Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for 4 years in a row, 5 maybe in a row. And and we might have gone back again, but wasn't sure about that. I know we hunted that one time with Dick Collins and Bob Anderson several years running. And then we started going up there maybe a little more than that. And then somewhere, as Chuck said, in the early 90s, we got out about at the same time.
Got out of Lucky 10 and bought the cabin.
And bought the cabin.
When did we start really hunting the river? Right about that same time. We just
100%.
About likely we'd go to the river as we would go to any. We'd maybe hunt opening weekend at one of our places. And
my earliest memories were we hunted Lucky 10 the first 2 days, and then we went to Black River, like you said.
Yeah, when we got Lucky 10.
When we had Lucky 10, that's exactly what we did a couple of years running.
It was good early. It was better early than Brinkley.
We didn't have the opening weekend at Black River because it was a paid hunt. We were paying.
So he had customers though. First weekend, you went on the third day of the season.
Right. Do you remember squirrel hunting that one year? We duck hunted. You were there. I'm pretty sure. I've got 2 squirrel hunt.
I remember a couple of great squirrel hunts. I think that's what you're going to tell at Brinkley.
No, we were thinking about a squirrel hunt at the Langell.
Yeah.
The preaching squirrel.
The preaching squirrel.
I don't guess I do.
And the one we made you get up on someone's shoulder and reach your hand down in there.
You made me do that. That was at Brinkley.
Was that Brinkley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember Bruce had that trailer up on top of that hill. We were in that little stretch of woods between the Hilton, the pit that was in the corner of the field and the nuclear field, and stuck your hand down in there.
We'd killed a squirrel in Brinkley. And
we were pretty sure we killed it.
Pretty sure. He went in that hole. And so I put Spence up on my shoulders, and he reached his hand down in that, and he did it, man. He said, "You want me to put my hand down there?" I said, "Yeah, you got to see if that squirrel's down in there." And that boy put his arm down in
elbow
that thing,
deep, man.
at least to his elbow.
Feel fur.
Maybe fur, and he pulled that squirrel out dead.
I'll never forget, we came back up there to the trailer, and Dad said, "What were you going to do if it was alive?" And it had never even crossed my mind.
Didn't cross your mind, yeah. That's not an option.
It never...
Didn't cross Hollis's mind either.
I've doubted a few things Hollis has asked me to do since then. That started. I mean,
The Preaching Squirrel. If I ever wrote a book, I'd title it "The Preaching Squirrel," but because I think that was such a fun story. I was Peggy Sue years, and we hunted that morning at Lucky 10, and that's Langell River. Hunted off the Langell River, and we'd killed us some ducks, killed them good, and got a limit. Those, I think that might have been 2 duck limit kind of a thing year.
Yeah, it could have been. I don't remember it being that way.
But we killed ducks, and so we couldn't go. We were going to go to Black River that afternoon, but we couldn't go there just right then because it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and we needed to show up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we took a nap in that black blazer, and and got up, and I got restless and decided me and Peggy Sue were going to go squirrel hunt. And I shot a squirrel, and it ran forever, and she tracked it all the way, seemed like a quarter of a mile, and she stopped at a tree, and she wouldn't leave that tree. And I said, "It's got," and it was a dead tree and had a hole in it, and I went back and got Chuck and said, I'm sure it's in that tree. What can we do? And he's up, and we're about ready to go to Brinkley, and so we went back and looked at that tree and
thinking about maybe chopping it down or something.
How do you do it? It's about this big, about 12, 13 inch diameter. It gives rottenish tree, but it's plenty tall, and there's a hole in it, and about 10 feet up there's another hole, and I can't quite get in it, and I'm thinking about it. Surely it's in there, and were you there then?
I don't remember this story.
Okay, and I don't remember that either because I'd have made you probably get in there. But I went around the other side of the tree just piddling, and looked up, and that squirrel, there's another hole in that tree about, say 15 feet up, and a little bit higher, and he's about half his body sticking out, and he's got his arms crossed like this. He was coming out when he got stuck or died. He's dead. He's just sitting there dead.
With his arms crossed.
His arms crossed, and he looked like he was preaching.
He was in a little pulpit in that tree, and he looked like a little monk, kind of leaning out, and we called him the preaching squirrel.
I said, "Chuck, that squirrel's preaching." and Chuck, loud that he was, and so we called that the preaching squirrel.
Jeez.
We got it out of there.
Yeah. So we got out of that and sold our interest in Lucky 10. And which I think was good for Chuck and I, and it was good to get out of that, I think, and we ended up buying an interest in the cabin at Black River.
It was always frustrating because Hollis would always want to go on some adventure, like we'd be on the interstate and we'd be trying to decide. Kind of keep in mind that there's no cell phones, and so nobody knew where we were. We'd be on the interstate deciding if we're going to cross over the bridge and go to our place that we paid all this money for, and we had a really nice place to hunt, which is going to be easy. We're exactly where I wanted to go, and he'd be wanting to go to some awful place down in Mississippi that he'd heard about, some river or some place where I was going
to
drop a boat off the side of a cliff, and
that was the day.
We'd pass the interstate talking, and then that would mean we'd pass the bridge, we'd be going south into Mississippi, and then now the question was going to be, are we going to go to Tunica, or are we going to go to Charleston, or are we going to go try to find some new thing? And so a lot of times we left our partners, that owned the property to hunt without us, and we'd just haul off down to some river, hunt out of our boat, or float up into somebody's field that was off of a river somewhere and thought it was, we saw ducks.
Why did you talked about hunting the Mississippi River in there. What made you hunt the Mississippi River?
We got introduced to that from Bob Anderson. He knew how to do that a little bit, and so we tagged on to him. He had hunted the river. He had a river boat, and who really knew about it was Dick Collins.
We watched those guys hunt, learned a lot from them.
And you met Bob through Butler?
He was a salesman that called on at me at a veterinary clinic and just was a funny guy. He was talented and a really good outdoorsman, and he really liked us and would, enjoyed being with us. And so we ended up having equipment that he didn't have, so we made a good team. He knew how to call him. He was a really good duck caller, good hunter all around. Hunted a lot of river days with Bob, but he'd go anywhere that we'd take him. He didn't
like wearing waders.
I know. He got so big.
I remember that early on that he wouldn't.
They didn't make him his size.
He'd go to Black River with us, but he didn't like it. He griped about it.
And then the last time he went to Black River, he had to pee so bad, he couldn't get his waders on and off, and and he said, I can't do that again.
Well, it probably didn't help that about 11:30 in the morning, after we'd all had a thermos of coffee, we just walked over beside him and
Take a leak.
and dropped our waders down and just, really commented to each other about how pleasant this experience was.
Well,
And he was somewhere between jaundiced and murderous. It was one of those two us's there. He was about to die of some kind of toxic uremic poisoning.
so he said he wasn't going to do that again, and he didn't. So he hunted out of a boat.
I do remember that was always a deal because there were little blinds in the big hole, and they weren't big enough for him. And the waiter, he hated his waders, hated them.
Yeah, the waders were the deal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
But we'd hunt the river, and the river, in those days, I think that was maybe our most fun hunts
Fun.
in our life.
Yeah.
And I guess we could call Tunica the river.
We thought of it that way. I mean,
The cutoff.
We would, if the river water levels were right, we'd go all the way to the run out and cross the river some, and hunt some of those willow. Sandbars had willows flooded, or we'd hunt. It just depended.
Tunica's definitely part of the river system. I would say.
Yeah.
All right. You referenced a minute ago the 2 duck limit, and there's 2 things I was going to get y'all to tell. I remember a time that y'all hatched this crazy plan that all the ducks were in South Lake on Brandywine Island, and so
It wasn't a 2 duck limit then, though. I don't think.
Well, the story that I'm thinking of, I wasn't shooting a gun, and y'all shot your limit in one volley.
It could be then.
And we didn't get. It was not the time we got run out by wardens or anything, but we made our way through there and
Found it.
and got set up in daylight. And as soon as we got the decoys out and barely got the blind down, y'all both killed both your ducks, and we picked them up.
I remember stuff similar to that happening a time or two. So I can go.
But when we
on
got
that.
through
Yeah.
those woods to South Lake, it was like the whole lake was full of ducks. I mean, there were ducks everywhere. And so we busted them up, and y'all were like, well, let's just hunt right here, and tie it up and drop the sides of the blinds and toss decoys out. And
There was just something magical about going out on the river or Tunica and competing, with other hunters and trying to be the best and finding the best place. And when you experience success in that environment, it was very, rewarding, and it was fun to hunt out of our boat together like it was private. We could just
It was so
enjoy being
comfortable
together.
too. Got to where we'd put a little
Heater
bad
in.
days, really bad days, and that was when it was good. Put a heater in there, and but it was completely, totally dog dependent,
Yeah.
and we had that. We
In
had a dog.
1994, we bought a boat that had a 40 horsepower Mariner on it, and we built a good blind for it, and that boat's still in the water today.
yeah, that's true. Paul Michael's still.
Yeah, it's still a heck of a boat. It was well built. We put it back together a number of times to welded the aluminum.
It was a
back.
Duracraft.
It was a Duracraft, and I regret that I sold it. I ran out of money when we came out here to build the house, and I really wanted to buy a horse, so I sold the boat, bought a horse, and I have a little better boat now. But that was the boat, man, and we piled up some ducks out of that boat.
I said that about the 2 duck limit because I know it'll take you a minute to find it, but the picture I always go back to this time of year is of the big hole, and I think it's in 1995 when the limit changed to 4 ducks. It was actually, I think it changed to 5. It changed to 4 mallards, and you could kill an extra duck. Do you remember that? Do you remember the picture that I'm referring to?
On the stump.
And
Well,
it's
on the log, or
well, it's a log, but it's the
round.
y'all aren't talking about the same hunt.
it's the 3 of us and Glenn and Kevin and
it's in
and
there.
Will and Sandy and Peggy, I think.
Yeah,
I'm
No,
almost
I
positive
know
they're all there.
Yeah.
we lined them up on that log.
But we were like 9 kinds of proud that we killed a full mallard limit and killed teal as our extra ducks.
And that's about what year?
I think it's 95, November of 95.
So
I didn't have a driver's license.
the stump duck is a story left in the book. You know, best to leave that story in the book because Hollis, we refer to that hunt as the stump hunt because we ran out of places to put our ducks that day, and one of our mentors, we asked him, you know, what we need to do because we were in a dilemma. The ducks were landing all around us, and we had an appropriate pile of ducks.
We had a stump full.
And we asked our friend Gail, you know, what are we going to do? And he said, while he was still shooting, he said, find another stump. They're not always days like that.
That's probably the same stump that Jesse put all those ducks in.
Probably
that dog.
not. Probably not.
You remember that? Remember you trained a dog for Gail.
Yeah, that was Jesse.
And it always ugly dog looked like, you know, y'all always talked about it looked like a stray dog because she wasn't black. She had brown patches because she was so ugly. But
she had a long nose too.
She did have a long nose.
We went back up there a year or so after, and he'd been hunting with her, and that dog would pick every duck up and put it in she had a stump that she sat on, and she'd put them all in that stump.
Yeah,
not hiding them, but I mean, my point is she was on autopilot. I mean, just doing her thing.
I'm pretty sure this stump was a
Little
fresh
deeper.
cut stump, and it was just a platform. It was a really big tree that they cleared out, and we were just standing by it, and that's just where we naturally put them. And when we got to a certain point, there just wasn't any more room.
There you go.
That's
what are you looking at?
That's the stump ducks.
Yeah.
Show Chris.
That might not be the 2 duck limit right there.
There were a lot of people.
There were a lot of ducks. You know, you learn from those things that it was really not the thing to do. But man, that was a fun day.
And we hunted all day.
Yeah, in Black River you could hunt all day.
You know, you hunt all day. That day, and you could hunt all day, but that day we stayed out there all day. And that's way down into the day. Mm-hmm. That picture got taken way down into the day.
Mm-hmm. It was, as I recall, it wasn't really good early. You know, we actually killed them in the afternoon. They came back to the woods, and everybody else had gone, and the competition was less, and we called them in there.
That getting distracted. That picture right there is Wayne.
Wayne.
And that's Ronnie Shannon. That's Larry Wayne Armstrong.
Yeah.
Is that on the
Chris,
sure is.
Is that on the river?
That's Brandywine Chute.
So
those are our game wardens.
The game wardens would come and get in our boat and hunt with us.
They'd take their warden boat, you know, when they were doing
check everybody
and go park somewhere, and then
they'd come find us.
And then they'd come with us and we'd hunt, and then they'd go back in their boat and go do their hunting.
They were just such dear friends.
And the old man, they're both still dear friends. We see Larry Wayne and his wife, and they come by the house and regular still. And Ronnie's retired long since, and he and his wife Sarah, they're just the dearest people to us.
But someday we'll have time to tell that story. That we met Larry, our game warden friend, because he wrote us tickets for things we didn't do, and which is true, but he thought we did, and then when he realized it, we just became lifelong friends. To me, that's one of Hollis's finest moments.
Yeah, we got in trouble for something somebody else did, and but Larry didn't know that for years. But he is one of our closest friends.
Ronnie retired as one of the top-ranking TWRA, right?
Right.
Yeah, and Larry, he's up there now, in some higher position.
Yeah, he's a muckety muck. So what year? 95?
I had it as 95. Yeah, 95 or 96.
Because I have a picture. I thought I stuck a picture of that of a, and I may not have pulled it out. I probably didn't. It's a log.
I think it's on the table over there.
Yeah. It's a log full of ducks.
Straight, and the log is straight from the camera.
Can you look and see if there's a log picture over there full of ducks?
I hadn't seen it in the pictures you brought.
It's
I did. I saw it.
I believe it's right over there.
But
So you mentioned
That's it.
a dog named Jesse, and then you talked about
that's
needing to have a dog to hunt some other places. When did y'all make the jump into having a duck dog?
Pretty early on, I got a dog from Marty Roberts that had been a stray lab that he had found. It had heartworms. It was, we don't really know, maybe 3 or 4 years old. And Marty had sort of started training it, and he just decided I needed to have that dog. And he couldn't afford to care for it. And so I took care of it, got it. For some reason, I just wanted her, liked her. And her name was Abby. And Abby was, arguably the best duck dog I've ever hunted with, short of Peggy Sue, that was the best. But Peggy Sue just wasn't an athlete because of her hip problems, and Abby was just a natural. We didn't know anything about training dogs, and Marty really didn't have. He was a very good dog trainer type guy from the time he was born, I think, but he put a little bit of obedience kind of stuff in her, but she just was a natural. So we hunted with Abby until she died by accident. She got hit by a school bus when Spence was probably...
I was in kindergarten.
Yeah. And then I guess Peggy Sue.
Our next dog, Abby. So we had Abby for a couple of years.
But real quick, the dog thing, I mean, obviously you're a veterinarian. People know that. But was that just part of the gig? That's just what you did? I mean, you got a dog because you were going duck hunting.
Yeah,
it's part of your equipment.
Yeah, we were at that point. We were, it seemed like a great idea, and so she was some kind of good. She was good. I'd hate to think about how much money I would spend to buy her back if I could have that dog again. How much would you pay for Peggy Sue?
You took the picture.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. They're
do not admit how much money you'd pay for Peggy Sue back.
No, yeah.
So Abby was first, then Peggy Sue was next.
Yeah, and Peggy, we only had Abby for a couple of years, maybe three at the most.
Yeah.
But and we didn't train her. She came. We didn't know anything about training dogs, and then I stumbled into a dog. You want a dog? Yeah. And that's, how did that's kind of a little bit blind luck right there. I mean, I wasn't looking for a dog. And so I went in 1988, went and bought it. We were given a dog. A good friend said, "You want my pick of the litter?" And I said, "Sure." And so I ended up getting a dog, and her name's going to be Peggy Sue. And for the three of us here, and she's not been replaceable. She's legendary. We could stop this conversation, talk about that dog for a while, and it was, Chuck had now Chuck's, in the veterinarian side of Chuck, every now and then he'd keep her for me when I was out of town. When Brenda and I were gone, he'd come back and he'd say, "Let me just tell you what she did, at the house, and you'd say, "She did what?" There's things that
like she understood everything that came out of your mouth.
Yeah, she could do things, and she just so smart, and she had no hips. She had her hips were completely dislocated. And then as she got older, we did hip replacement. We sent her to. I took her to Ohio State.
She was probably in the first small number of dogs in the United States that had total hip replacement surgeries, and she had them on both sides by a guy named Olmsted, who was kind of the father of hip replacement in veterinary medicine. He was at Ohio State, Hollis.
Ohio State, Columbus, Ohio State, and I took her up there 1 year. Then the next year had the other hip. But go back to Peggy, couple things. One, Peggy was born in 1988, and May of '88, and she died on November 24th, in 2002. And And
I didn't realize she was 14.
It's a dog. It's a special dog when you can remember both of those dates without thinking about it.
And the things she did taught us. That dog taught us for 10 years. I trained her, but that's a joke. That's a joke. And we did seminars where I was asked to do seminars. I'd go to a show, and I'd take that dog. I'd go to a show. They'd say, "Will you bring Peggy Sue?" I'd go to a show, and I could do anything you asked me to do with that dog. And I was green. I was really green. And you could put dummies all out in there, and I could pick them up. You know, I could put 4 dummies on this table, and you could tell me which one you wanted. You know, pick them up in order. You know, she could get right here, go, oh, nope, I want that first one. And you get that kind of thing. You know, is
Parlor tricks, but they really weren't. She'd lead the horses for us.
But that was Angie.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, parlor tricks. But then when it came to duck hunting, she'd sit on that front of the boat, and it's 0 degrees, and the river's icing over, and she's just solid thing of ice. I have pictures of that. She just looks like a white thing up there, and she'd get every duck every time. She'd go out of sight and get that duck and come back. And she might be gone 15 minutes. She'd get that duck.
She's the one that would go ahead of them in the current.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
She
cut them off.
Yeah, and catch them like a baseball. And
so you go down the bank. We had a place that had a lot of current that we hunted, and that's a cool story. But
yeah, and so dogs, Peggy Sue, and then we went a couple of years without a dog, and we got another dog a couple of years later, and it had some little bit of training. It was a dog somebody didn't want, and had gone to a home, and they didn't want this dog, and that was Angie.
What about Sandy though?
Well, you missed Will and Sandy both.
Yeah, and so that's just you're absolutely right. So then
she was a good dog.
Toward the end of Peggy's life, I got another dog from Marty. He gave it away because he didn't want this dog anymore. It was a great, big, beautiful, gorgeous yellow lab, Will. And Will had puppies, and Sandy, Chuck's dog, was one of those. And Sandy was a great dog, and also a beautiful yellow lab.
Poor Will was kind of like the coach that had to follow Nick Saban.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a terrible spot to be.
He was number 2 man behind Michael Jordan.
Right. Yeah. Right. With a lot less talent than whoever that guy was.
But
Scotty Pippen.
He'd retrieve ducks, and man, he was a handsome dog. Oh my gosh.
He just couldn't smell.
He didn't have much of a nose, and
there never was a nicer dog.
Yeah. Sweet.
But Sandy was a really good dog. She was our dog for a long time before Angie.
And then Angie showed up, and Angie was our next black lab for 10 years, and then in those years now, Spence is on board now. So Spence, has got dogs also, So we're describing some years we had 2 dogs. Now Spence starts out with River and then Brooke, and then and those dogs are.
There's a short period where we hunted. You brought Peggy and hunted Will and Sandy.
That's right.
And we have a bunch of pictures of Brinkley and that picture I was just showing you from the big hole where we took all 3 of them on a pretty regular basis.
You had to have room.
And we quail hunted Peggy.
She was great.
She's an unbelievable quail dog. She'd find that quail and she'd just sit there.
Well, she was the best turkey hunting dog too, though.
Oh man! Yeah.
You'd sit in the turkey blind and maybe, be falling asleep, and she'd wake up and she'd go on full alert and look in a certain direction, and no doubt about it, it would be a turkey. Like, she wouldn't get awake and tell you it was a squirrel or a deer. Once she kind of figured out what we were wearing and how we were setting up, she knew
that was
true.
That was always the joke, was that you had to tell her what you're about to do.
Sit there in the blind.
I told Hollis all she needed was a ride.
Right.
Because one day we went,
Yeah, I was
There
gonna
was
say, tell
never
the-
a better dove hunting dog than Peggy Sue. She'd get everybody else's doves in the field and bring them all back to us. We'd have 45 doves, and they belonged to 5 other hunters. And so she got a whole limit of doves, and we maybe had shot half of it. And then she got all squirrely, that's the word I would use, and she went behind us, and she caught a live squirrel, broke its neck, and brought it back and put it on the pile. And I'm like, Hollis, she doesn't need us. She got more doves than we did and her own squirrel. Like, she just needs a ride.
And everything he said is right. The squirrel was before the dove hunt. We were sitting there lined up in a tree line in the shade, waiting for the the hunt to start. And we're just talking, lying to each other, and she goes into this fescue field, and it's about a foot deep, that time of year, and so she gets downwind, and her nose just popping, and she's back and forth, and if this is the squirrel, she's way back this, and then it gets narrow, and all of a sudden, thunk, and then you can see it just jumps down and comes back up, and she's holding a great big old fox squirrel. and in a microsecond, that thing bit her, and she yelped and dropped it. And then she picked it up the next time, and she just kind of did something like that, and it just went glunk. Did. And then without saying anything, and we're all standing there, there's 6 or 7 guys just sitting there with stupid looks on their face, and she just walks right up to it, comes back up, and like Chuck this, sit and just gives it to hand, and then Chuck says, "Well, she didn't even need you for your gun anymore. Now she needs is a ride." And that's it. That's all. That's all he said.
That was a good one-liner, but it was true.
Yeah.
She, you can't. We could do this all day with Peggy, but the phenomenal dog, and there was just no way to understand her capacity for figuring out what it was we were going to do that day. That was probably the most fun part of her, because she would, if we had been deer hunters in those days, we'd have never lost a deer, because she would have found them, and she had the ability to locate things. She tracked your little boy who walked away from the house.
Right, and she tracked deer, but for a few people, she could do that great. We just didn't. We weren't deer. We weren't deer
situation.
Hunters.
Yeah, weren't in the
Phil Long.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Phil Long came over to the house and with Sammy, and I'm home. It's afternoon, and Sammy's, he's kind of young, and he says, "Can Peggy help us find a deer? My dad shot a deer, and he thinks it's a real good one." I said, "Sure." I can't go. I'm doing something, and I said, "You take care of her." And so they loaded her up and took her, and they got to wherever the deer was, and Phil, Phil, he's sure of this, and he said that deer went this way and crossed that creek right there and went to the right. And I told Sammy, I said, "Sammy, you let that dog go. Don't try to tell her no. Just because I did that.
Just follow her.
You just got to trust her." And so they put her out. She crossed that creek, and she made an immediate left. And Phil started saying she didn't go that way, didn't go that way. And about 150 yards, she walked straight to it and had that thing in 5 minutes, standing right over it.
With somebody else.
And
Yeah, we weren't even there.
I wasn't even there.
Hey,
And they both came back.
Think about that for just a minute.
They both came back and said, they still talk about it, 40 years later. But I've got more of those. We have a few more of those stories, and turkeys and the deer and stuff. That was how she knew what we were doing and what that was all about. The quail was unbelievable. We had a good bird dog. When they got really tight and hard to find, they were put out birds. Peggy found every one.
She would retrieve them. She would find the singles that, we'd go clean up after the guys would pay somebody to go the next day and go to a quail hunting place where they had put out maybe 90 quails, and we'd hunt the next day with Peggy Sue and get the 40 they didn't find.
Routinely, because the friend of ours had farm next to a pay-to-hunt place. They'd use his farm to put out birds. So once a month, they'd call us and say, we put out 100 birds and we only killed 60. And we'd go kill the other 40 every time. One more story I'm going to tell you. We went down to Oxford, Mississippi. Chuck and I go to Oxford, Mississippi. We quail hunt. And we went down there, had Christy, that's the bird dog, and Peggy. And we got our quail, and we went and thanked the man, and went up there checking out or thanked the man or whatever we were doing, talking to him. And Chuck asked him, do you ever put out pheasants? Did you have pheasants? He said, occasionally. He said, and again, we're young, we look green, and he says, and he looks over to his right, our left, big field, those sage grass in it, about waist high, something, big sage grass field. He said, I've got 6 pheasant out in that field right there. They've been there all year, and I've had a few people hunted them, but they hadn't killed any. And they said, well, can we hunt those sometime? And he looked at Chuck and he said, son, what are you going to hunt it with? And he said, and he pointed to Peggy. He said, you're going to hunt it with this? And he said, yes, sir. He said, well, if you can kill, he said, any of those you can kill with that, you can have for free. And so he said, serious, can we try it? And he said, and now he's calling his son and said, you have at it. And we killed all 6.
Right then.
Right then. We killed all 6.
Well, you got a few minutes? Yeah. Let's go get them.
And it wasn't much to it. We killed all 6. And it's not a big deal. That man said that. People been hunting them all year. It was Peggy.
Yeah.
So we had, Spence had 2 great dogs. After that, we had Angie. I had a dog for 10 years, good dog, but average. Is that fair?
She's better than that.
Okay, good dog, and really high on parlor tricks. She could go get the horse for you and things like that.
Go get firewood.
Yeah, she brought in all our firewood. Open the door. Bad weather, she'd bring in firewood till you were tired of it, and things like that.
Should go get your shoes.
Yeah, shoes, remote, anything you want, I can do that. So we had River, and then Brooke, and then through that lineage, through Chuck had bred one of Spence's dogs and got Minnie, and then now. And I graced with the puppy from Minnie, and so now we're back. Our dog now is a 5-year-old, and her name is Maggie May. I think when I think about Brenda and this family, you can these are in years, and we're trying to decide what we did in 1995 or this or that, but. Life doesn't work like that. You could say, well, that was, Brenda could say, that's before I met Hollis. That's after I met Hollis. That's seasons in our life, And I think we work like that, God says in Genesis that this, as long as the earth is here, there will be seasons. He promises us in Genesis 8. And I think that's how he works in our lives too. There's going to be seasons. So Spence and Lindy, they're in seasons of raising their children, and whatever. You can define them different ways, but one of the ways we can define our hunting lives is with dogs. Those for me.
Yeah.
For me.
The Peggy Sue years.
Those are Peggy years.
Abby years.
Well, that's Abby. That's kind of so. This is Maggie's time.
Yeah.
That's Brooke. I remember, Brooke in Canada or whatever the thing. That's,
it's very defining. I mean, to your point, you know, it shapes all of your memories from that season, that time. You know, it's the interaction you had with your dog. Even if it's not a great dog, you remember things about. It's a lens you look at it through, for sure.
Are you ready to uncover the next hidden gem in the DU Vault? The Ducks Unlimited Into the Vault auction, sponsored by Dive Bomb Industries, offers an extraordinary chance to claim rare and exclusive treasures. From unique, one-of-a-kind firearms to remarkable prints and never-before-seen relics, there's something for every collector. Visit www.intothevault.org today to preview what the vault has inside. Bidding opens November 27th. Mark your calendar and don't miss your chance to own a piece of history. Your next great find is just a bit away. Thank you for joining us this week for part 1 of Origins. Tune in next week for the rest of the conversation with the Halfords. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one.